Welcome to the session on ethics in engineering practice. Today we will discuss about the introduction to ethical reasoning and engineering ethics. The outline of the module will be, we will discuss engineering as a profession, own self views versus public views, why ethics in engineering, professional versus personal ethics, what is engineering ethics, situations of ethical issues for engineers, understanding the distinction between ethics, morals and laws, opinions versus judgments, can we base our ethics on opinions and judgments, an overview of ethical theories, which theory should we use, and the classic case on engineering ethics, the Aberdeen 3. So, this will be the whole coverage of the module which we will discuss through the lectures that are going to follow. So, first we are going to discuss about the engineering as a profession. What we find, like the Herbert Hoover way back in, he gave the importance of the engineering profession, where he told the great liability of the engineers compared to men of other professions is that his works are out in the open where all can see them. His acts step by step are in a hard substance. He cannot bury his mistakes in the grave like the doctors. He cannot argue into thin air or blame the judge like the lawyers. He cannot, like the politician, screen his shortcomings by blaming his opponents and hope that the people will forget. The engineer simply cannot deny that he did it. If his works do not work, he is damned forever. So, to look into this important quotation without undermining the other professions and their importance also, what we can see, because engineering profession is something where the outcomes are important for the it is a tangible product where everybody can see and use, and then it affects the life of people, then it is very important to own up the responsibility of the outcomes faced by the users of the product, and we cannot deny like we have not done it. So, that is the important quote from there, which talks of that as you see from this quote, like the engineer simply cannot deny that he did it. With this, we will move forward to the discussion of engineering as a profession. So, there could be two viewpoints. One is how engineers view themselves, and the other is how the public at large view them. So, now we will see how engineers view themselves they view themselves as problem solvers. Engineering is enjoyable. Engineering benefits people, provides a public service. Engineering provides the most freedom of all professions, and engineering is an honorable profession. How the public views engineering, we can see the engineer's role is at utilitarians, where there is a cost benefit analysis of whatever they are doing. Engineers as positivists, they have to have a positive orientation towards life, towards the safety and health issues of the public at large. They cannot say like solution is not possible. They should believe like every problem must be having a solution, because they are taken to be as problem solvers. Third, what we see over here, like they are taken to be like applied physical scientists, because they need to work on the design and find out like how it is working. They have a socialist approach engineers are drivers for converting technology to their benefit, and they have to take a rational, logical and systematic approaches to problem solving, which train to alienate the engineer from the public because of the technicalities. So, sometimes what happens, the general public at large may not understand the in-depth technical issues involved in it, but it is the great responsibility and challenge for the engineers to translate that technology into something which is usable and which is in the benefit for the public at large. So, these are two viewpoints which the engineers have about themselves and what the public at large have about the engineers. Next, we are going to discuss why we discuss about ethics in engineering. So, what we see over here, the National Society of Professional Engineers is most widely recognized governing body of engineers, which decides the overall standards and code of ethics for all engineering professions in US and serves as a reference point for other bodies in the world. So, we will discuss the NSPE Code of Conduct for Engineers, which states engineers shall at all times recognize that their primary obligation is to protect the safety, health, property and welfare of the public. Safety, health, property and welfare of the public. If their professional judgment is overruled under circumstances where the safety, health and property or welfare of the public are endangered, they shall notify their employer or client and such other authority as may be appropriate. So, this is an important code of conduct where they have always, because it is a very noble profession and it is an important profession, they have to go by their professional judgment, and where they see if they feel like their professional judgment about the safety, health and welfare and prosperity of the public to take care of them, these issues are overruled, then they must immediately go for reporting it to their appropriate bodies who can hear to these concerns and take remedial measures for it, which is giving a hint towards the right for engineers for whistleblowing if necessary, which we will discuss in the subsequent lectures in the upcoming modules. Next, what we are going to discuss, engineering, it is a blend of technology, social science and business. So, engineering is done by the people and it is done for the people. Engineers' decisions have a major impact on all the three areas in the confluence, like how they use the technology, what upgradation do they make in that technology, and how it is affecting the society at large. Is it taking into concern, is it delivering certain products and services where there is a demand from the society which to fulfill certain of the needs of the society, and how they are how it is affecting the business of the organization also, in which maybe they are employed. So, engineers' decisions have an impact on all three areas in the confluence. The public nature of the engineers' work ensure that ethics will always play a role, because there are different stakeholders involved, and when the society at large is involved, then what happens, these ethical issues in the decision making processes are very important, because the ultimate beneficiaries of their outputs are the general public at large. Thus, it becomes important for engineers to make sure that the interest of the groups to be affected prevails over their own interest of profit. This is very important. Like when we discuss in the next chapters, next modules, we will be discussing about conflicts of interest that may happen in the engineering as a profession and how to take remedial measures of it. So we have to keep into concern, you have to give primary responsibility towards the safety, health, property and welfare of the public, and it's a part of the responsibility of the engineers to protect these things. And if these comes in and this is the responsibility to protect these four pillars for the public is over and above thinking of one's personal profit. And if in any case some conflict of interest happens, then how to solve it also we will discuss in the upcoming modules. So here we are going to discuss again what is personal and professional ethics, because engineering is a profession and we are discussing about ethics with respect to it, and there is personal ethics also. So it is important to distinguish between a personal ethics and professional ethics or business ethics, although there isn't always a clear boundary between the two, because at the end of the day it is the person who is making the decision, and it is the virtue, the value of the person, his or her worldview, judgment, which makes him or her to take a decision about any business problem also. So personal ethics deals with how we treat others in our day-to-day lives. Many of these principles are applicable to ethical situations that occur in business and engineering also. However, professional ethics often involves choices of an organizational level rather than at a personal level. Many of the problems will seem different because they involve a relationship between two corporations, between a corporation and the government, and between corporation and groups of individuals. So it is a blend of like personal, like there are so many stakeholders involved, and because this professional ethics, this interest of the corporation, then the interest of the public at large, interest of the government and the interest of the corporation, the interest of the corporation and the groups of individuals, and maybe one's own self-interest, all these are like intertwined with each other. Maybe sometimes there will be conflicts of interest also, and it is this personal ethics, own value system, virtue, which will help us to find an answer towards how to solve these professional ethics issues, dilemmas, and to arrive at a solution which is a balanced solution. So what is engineering ethics? According to Martin et al., engineering ethics relates to the study of the moral issues and decisions confronting individuals and organizations involved in engineering, the study of related questions about moral conduct, character, policies and relationships of people and corporations involved in technological activity. So it is there are 2 points: the study of moral issues and decisions confronting individuals and organizations. So here maybe it is a blend of again a personal ethics and professional ethics. The study of related questions about moral conduct, character, policies. So how to behave in a particular situation, if there are any guiding principles given by the organization or the professional body which will guide the engineers to behave in a certain way in a given situation. All these things are important when we are studying like what is engineering ethics. It is the study of related questions about the moral conduct, characters, policies and relationships of people and corporations involved in technological activity. So again the professional ethics where maybe corporation and government, two corporations, corporations and the public at large, corporation and the groups of individuals, corporation and the individual, always there is an intersection of two parties and their maybe mutual interests are involved, and how to respond to this maybe sometimes conflicting interest of each others and dilemma involved out of this, to which there may be no yes and no type of answer. There is a certain gray area which is the moving backward and forward. You need to decide, should I go this way? If I go this way, maybe I am not answering the demands of the party B. If I go take a decision which is concerning party B, maybe I am not looking into the interest of the party A, then how do I decide? So based on, and these are to be in the framework of the technological activities. So that concerns about engineering ethics. So we were discussing mainly about the situations of ethical issues. So here we will just focus on some of those situations. So engineering ethics is concerned with the question of what the standards in engineering ethics should be and how to apply these standards to particular situations. Now, what could be the situations in where this dilemma may arise are conceptualization, design, testing, manufacturing, sales, service, then supervision and project teams, project timelines and budgets, expectations, opinions and judgments of the team members in terms of products, whether it is unsafe or less than useful, designed for, whether it is designed for obsolescence, inferior materials or components, unforeseen harmful effects to the society or not, are some of the areas, situations where ethical issues may arise, because there will be conflict of interest of various parties involved in this whole process. Other fields which are also ethics are important and critical are of course medical ethics, legal ethics, business ethics, scientific ethics, and along with that what we see in for engineering ethics, at every step from the procurement of the material to the final delivery and after sales, maybe at every step ethics becomes very, very important, because ultimate beneficiary is the society at large, and it is the safety and welfare, health conditions of the and the property of the public at large, which are the major, to protect these things are the major responsibilities of the engineers. So, like, what are the possible engineering tasks and their possible problems are like conceptual design. In that stage, if people are blind to new concepts, violation of patents or trademark secrets, products to be used is illegal. Cole's performance specifications, unrealistic assumptions, design depends on unavailable or untested materials, preliminary analysis stage, uneven, overly detailed or design in designer's area of expertise, marginal elsewhere, detailed analysis, uncritical use of handbook data and computer programs based on unidentified methodologies, simulation, prototyping, testing of prototype done only under most favorable conditions or not completed, design specifications too tight for adjustments during manufacture and use, design changes not carefully checked, scheduling of tasks, promise of unrealistic completion date based on insufficient allowance for unexpected events, purchasing, specifications written to favor one vendor, bribes, kickbacks, inadequate testing or purchased parts, fabrication of parts, variable quality of materials and workmanship, bogus materials and components not detected, assembly, constructions, workplace safety, disregard of repetitive motion stress on workers, poor control of toxic waste, quality control testing not independent but controlled by production manager, hence tests rushed or results falsified, advertising and sales, false advertising, availability quality, product oversold beyond clients' needs or means, shipping, installation, training, product too large to ship by land, installations and training subcontracted out, inadequately supervised, safety measures and devices, reliance on overly complex, failure prone safety devices, lack of a simple safety exit, used inappropriately or for illegal applications, overloaded, operations manuals not ready, maintenance parts repairs, inadequate supply of spares parts, hesitation to recall the product when found to be faulty. So, what we find, these are the engineering tasks, and if you see, this is a whole list of tasks from the start of conceptual design, then goals, and then preliminary analysis, detailed analysis, simulations and prototyping, design specifications, scheduling of tasks, purchasing, fabrication of parts, assembly constructions, quality control or testing, advertising, shipping, safety measures and devices, use, maintenance of parts and repairs. At each and every stages of the task, engineering task involved, there could be ethical issues and dilemmas coming up, because n number of parties are involved in it, and as an engineer, based on the professional judgment, that the professional conscience, the engineer has to take a decision which is in the best interest for the safety and security of the public at large. Because why we are repeating about it, to understand, because engineers' ethical decision has a far-reaching impact on the products and services in terms of safety and utility, the company and its stockholders, the public and the society, the benefits to the people, environment, the earth and beyond, the profession, how the public views it, the law, how legislation affects the profession and industry, personal position like the job, and the internal moral conflict of the person. So, and of course, the mistakes made by the engineers can be costly. So, what we will focus over here is a case which talks of the lethal treatment, the Therac 25 X-ray machine. The Therac 25, a radiation therapy machine, killed or injured patients at several North American healthcare facilities between June 1985 and January 87. When the technician operating the Therac 25 made a typographical error in entering instructions and tried to correct this mistake by using the delete key, the filter on the machine dropped out of position. The result was that the patient undergoing radiation treatment received a massive dose of X-ray. Several patients were injured or killed as a result before it was realized that the machine was dangerously defective. The Therac 25 had been poorly designed and inadequately tested. The story is a complicated one that highlights many subtle as well as gross mistakes. In particular, the design and testing of the linking of the hardware and software, in particular, the design and testing of the linking of the hardware and the software were totally inadequate. Competitive machines had a shield that would engage if the power were at high level. Furthermore, management decisions in the face of evidence of safety problems varied from short-sighted to negligent. The manufacturer, Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, had many problems and has since gone bankrupt. So this is a beautiful case where we see n number of parties are involved. So first we are talking of the tech, and here is a major question is who is responsible. If you are going to answer this question, actually what we see, like, and who is guilty or who could be held responsible for these type of injuries to the patient. So what we see is the technician who is operating this may have made a particular error. So we are not telling like this person is not responsible, but who, if you're talking of who is majorly responsible, and if you want to go and track back the major responsibility, what we find is that it was the design of the machine itself, whether it has been tested properly, whether it has been designed properly, and whether the long term consequences of the proper use or misuse of the this machine was thought of, and proactive measures were taken to arrest for these type of accidents and harms were taken or not, becomes a point of focus in this type of case. Whether it was a short-sightedness of the company to not to think of the possible harms that could be there from the maybe misuse or accidental use of this product, and how the design itself at the design stage can arrest for these type of happenings so that accidents can be prevented at large. Whether these were thought of or it was a very short-sighted design, negligence on the part of the manufacturer, these needs to be taken care of when we are discussing these type of cases. So we have been discussing these three terms, ethics, morals and law, because these comes hand in hand, and here we need to focus on the differences between these three terms or the intersection of these three terms. When we talk of morals, we talk of principles of right and wrong. When you talk of ethics, it is a set of moral principles guiding behavior and action, and when we talk of law, it is the binding codes of conduct formally recognized and enforced company policies. So if you see this picture, what we find, this is a legal framework, this is an ethical framework, and this is an illegal framework. Like if you see, this part is unethical but legal. Law may support it, but your conscience may not support it, because there comes the question of whether it is right and wrong from the perspective of the stakeholders involved. This is maybe ethical but may not be legal, in the sense it has not yet been transformed into law, but this is ethical, and the domain whole outside is unethical. So we will continue this discussion with again another thing, which is because we have been repeating these words about what is judgment. So we will see what is opinion and what is judgment. So an opinion that is supported by reasons is a reasoned judgment. An opinion that is given by someone with special training or experience to judge such matters, it's an expert or perhaps professional opinion, which is neither supported by reason nor offered by a qualified judge, is a mere opinion. So where we are talking of professional judgment of the engineers, we are talking of this like it is the judgment, it is a reasoned solution, reasoned opinion that is given by a person who is having some special training, in-depth knowledge, capability and experience to judge such matters, and engineering as a profession teaches you, prepares you to give this judgment. And when you are talking of the ethical issues, these judgment gets a widened like platform of thinking, the judgment that you are giving, whether it is right or wrong with respect to the different stakeholders that are involved in the decision, and the primary stakeholder that we are responsible to is to the public at large, and whether the things, the professional judgment and that we are giving, and with situations which are there at hand, and it has to be in the best interest of the safety, security, health, prosperity and welfare of the public at large. So, we will continue with your discussion with the ethical theories that are a matter of concern, because when you are talking of professional judgment and how to take a ethical decision based on the professional judgment about certain situations which are present at each of the task level that we have already seen, starting from conceptualization of the design to its preliminary and testing, and then final testing, and then delivery, and then maybe use and repair. At all these task stages, different situations could be involved where conflict of interest, ethical dilemma would be there. Then what are the guiding principles? Are there any guiding principles which will help us to take a proper ethical decision, which will show our way how to take a proper ethical decision? These are called the ethical theories which are involved, that are used in making ethical decisions, which we are going to focus on in our next lecture. Thank you.